There you go. Hey now, and how are you doing? Want to welcome you to the next episode of Peace, Love, and Bring a Bat. Today we're going to hear stories. We're going to do so much. We're going to dive into so much about finding balances on the roller coasters of life. We're going to bring on author T.A. Thompson. How are you doing today?
I am great. I'm super excited to be here.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. And I saw your book, and I can't wait to talk a little bit about it, but also dive into the bigger messages that you have. So why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
So, I am from Michigan. I'm a native to Michigan, which is where I wrote the book, like the perspective from. I have been in commercial insurance for the last 13 years. So, as crazy as it sounds, I bring that type of risk management and worst case scenario perspective to my writing, which is fantastic because I have a great imagination. And the fact that I've been trained to just look at everything as to how it's going to implode on itself, I feel like it makes for good writing.
100%. I remember I was in corporate America, I was on one of the business continuity plans teams for the longest time. And the first time that I sat in and I'm like, all right, we lose lights, right? Something as simple as that, right? Electricity. And then all the other scenarios, the person who is trained to do that was like, oh no, that's yeah, we don't. That's a blink of an eye. How about this? How about that? I walked out of that meeting, and but the idea of being prepared is so important because we had a steam pipe explosion. You don't plan for those, right? In the middle of Manhattan, a steam pipe explosion, which had all the asbestos flying in the air,
Ooh.
so much that we were out of our building for a while. How do you operate a building? This is pre-pandemic, really even the technology. It was the first times to just get in touch with people, and because it happened late in the day, not everybody came home with their computers or things like that. What do you do, and how do you move forward? So knowing that type of stuff does lead you to start experiencing and seeing things in a completely different way. Over the years when they showed me we had to test our business continuity plan, and then be like, I was like, all right, man, I got this steam pipe explosion, easy, and I did that. And then they're like, no, how about this? And I'm like, I don't know, you pressure test. So how do you translate the real life pressure testing to fiction?
So I take each scenario that I'm putting my characters in and I think, what's the worst thing that could possibly happen? And I want to write about that because everybody's jumping into fiction because they want the drama, right? They want that experience. They want the person to be put through the grinder. So I have to think of ways to make that interesting, and I'm able to take that risk management perspective and say, okay, so if we're set up in a dystopian post-apocalyptic world and she's going into like a raider encampment, how clean is it going to be? What types of issues are we going to have with sanitation? How are the people going to act? How are the people, going to treat each other? How are they going to treat her? What's this, what's it going to smell like? Like you just have to like pull all of that in
Yeah.
and put it into the book so that you can paint that picture for the readers. My challenge is not is trying not to put too much. I mean, this is the first book that I've released, and I wanted every reader to know what every rock looked like, right? So once I got done with the book and started rereading it and then sent it to an editor, it was like I need to scale this back or people are just going to put their heads against the wall. And I really feel like with quality editing, we were able to do that and still paint the picture that it's going to make people feel like they're in that setting.
Yeah, well, that's the tough part. So I've done some fiction writing as also, and while I give some detail, people are like, oh, you could add more detail. Like my one of my first fiction books, I published, went on a cruise with my kids, and didn't worry about it. Whatever efforts were, and I came back. One of my friend's daughters, my friend called me, and she was like, "Hey, my daughter needs to talk to you about this book." I was like, it was appropriate. Like like my first response was like, "Oh my God, what could a 12-year-old kid want to?" hear about my book. But then it was like, well, what happened with this? What happened with that? And my intention was only to have one book, and that intention has now been changed. But that's the incredible part. Where's that fine balance of what you want to add to what you don't, you know, what you're able to add? How do you balance not adding too much? How do you find that right balance?
So before, well, after I've written it, I tend to get everything out, and
Yep.
then I want to go back and fix it, right? Because I don't want to miss anything, and it's easier to pull it back than it is to add to it later, because then you feel like you're interrupting the flow of whatever you had going on. So when I'm going back and I'm editing it, I say, okay, this description, is it necessary for the scene? Does it help in any way to put the reader in the place of the character or to make them feel the emotion that I'm trying to get them to feel at that point in time? If the answer is no, then it comes out.
Yep. Yeah. It's tough but that's what I do. And when I help people with writing, I tell them, write down the bones, write down everything, every thought you have about it, put it all in to the cake, and then we'll figure out what really belongs in there. Especially with speeches, I don't want you to leave anything behind, and then we polish a speech, and then oh, but I want to add this, you know, why, then we have to kind of weave it into it. But that's really what it comes down to is being able to discern. That's a lesson in life as well, because what we add in and what we don't, what we pay attention to and what we don't.
Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah.
And it it's much easier to take it out than add it in. I had to add in a few things after going through the beta testing. And fortunately, like the main thing that I had to add in was at the very, very beginning of the book. So that was easy to squeeze in. But when you're trying to do it in the middle of the book because you didn't quite explain something or it
Yep.
just doesn't make sense to the reader, that can be tough because now where do I put it? How does it affect the story later on? Or how does it, contradict with what I already had in there? And you almost have to start over and read every single line just to add in maybe a paragraph or two paragraphs about something.
That's a project I'm doing now. I started a book 20 years ago. This medieval times sort of before Game of Thrones. Not that I'm that detailed for something like that,
No,
but
it's
um,
not.
but I started 20 years ago, and my voice has changed, my growing has changed, the world has changed. So some of the things that might have been in that book, so I'm rewriting it in some areas. How do you, I guess, balance that roller coaster on when you're creating a world building, right? It's not just writing a book; it's creating a whole new world out there.
I mean, that's a great question. It depends on how much you want the world to affect what's going on with your characters. In the Mark, I mean, I didn't want the world to dominate even though it's post-apocalyptic and dystopian. I didn't want that to be the center point of what was happening. So what I more focused on was the different communities that were going to be involved in the book, but I really only touched on them once the main character got to them, and then I
Right.
just kind of found a way to incorporate them into her life and into her world. And then so I had to lay out like how they were, and then I had to lay out the transition of when she became involved and then how she affected them ultimately. And I tried to do it as smoothly as I could without that being the central point of the book, because that wasn't the point of the book. But you still have to have that different world, otherwise it doesn't make sense. Like, how is this dystopian if you're not describing the
Right.
terrible things that have happened? So you're right. It is a fine line to try to balance on. Um, and I'm thinking in most cases I succeeded. There's probably a few spots where I may have gone a little light, but I didn't feel they were as necessary as some of the other parts of the book that stayed in.
Yeah, no, 100%. And that's what I meant by world building is not the globe, Earth. It's the world that we create, right? The small section. It could just be your world. Could just be that a town, or like you said, community to community as you're working as the character. I have a question. So I also a lot of the books I've written from a woman's perspective, a girl's perspective. I don't understand that, and I know I have daughters, so I'll give myself that, but I still don't understand the perspective. How did you write having a heroine as well as your main character?
So uh, I wanted a challenge.
Hmm.
That was why I did it, because I knew I had to think about what she would do and how she would behave differently than what I would do. However, I also manipulated the world to my advantage. So we're in a dystopian world. So the norms that society has are going to be different than what we have now. So I could tweak that and adjust that to fit my needs. The other thing is, because she expects to die at any moment, um, her behavior is going to be completely different than someone who expects to be alive for another,
Right.
50 years, which is completely possible because she, is 25, or possible in our world. So her decisions and her behaviors were really dominated by the fact that she didn't think she really had to deal with consequences too much. So I didn't have to necessarily go as deep into a woman's perspective and persona as I maybe would have if that situation would have been different. But it was tough. I had to also look at it through from a lens of motherhood, which is completely different than being a father.
Sure.
Um, but it was fun and I enjoyed the challenge. And I think for the world that I placed her in, I feel like I nailed it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Because that's one of the questions that I've gotten is, a few of your books, you're a woman. I go, well, I'm not a woman. So it's,
I love it when they say that.
yeah, I go that's fine. I'm secure in where I'm at, but it's one of those things. I was like, I don't know, because and I'll ask you the question, how I write. To me, it's a movie. It plays in my head, and it's just the vision. And sometimes it's me working through traumas that I've gone through or life experiences I've gone through that I want to, kind of heal through.
Mhm.
I have used it as healing. Did you find your book healing? After writing it, this is like a birthing process. You're a doula to get these people alive, is how I talk about it.
So honestly, writing the book was a double-edged sword. I felt phenomenal when I got it done, right?
Yep.
I created something. I'm very happy with it. It hit all of the major points that I was aiming for. But then at the time, because I finished this in 2020, at the time I was very hesitant to try to get it published just because, I was insecure and is it really
Yeah,
good?
it's scary.
And I couldn't get hardly anybody to read it because nobody wants to read a book on a PDF file on a computer, you
Yeah.
know? My daughter read it and she said she loved it, but what else is she going to say to me, right? So,
My girls would tell me exactly.
it, it, oh, they what? Yeah. Well, she did on a few things, but I was concerned. Like, okay, is she just blowing smoke at me? So I didn't want to trust that solely, and just in my ignorance of the whole publishing world and the things that you could do, I didn't know where to go next for it. So I just sat on it for a while. And then, I grew up a little bit and decided to research some different things that I could do to figure out if it was worth investing in to get it published.
Mm,
And I went to a marketing company and I had it beta read. And man, that is brutal. That is like getting
yep.
a colonoscopy without being knocked out.
Yeah.
But the good thing is, despite them telling you everything you need to change, they gave me a little scorecard, and it was like all the good things, and here's where we're rating it. And I had really, really positive reviews on it, and that was out without it being edited and without without really going through it with a fine tooth comb by a professional. So I felt very good about investing the time and the money into getting it published at that point.
Yeah, no, okay, and that's great because you kind of put yourself through the grinder to do that, uh, and it's worked really well. I mean, you know that's part of the thing is when you research it and you do the extra work, that's what kind of puts it into it. So, how proud of you are you of the finished product, and are you starting on a second one?
Well, the funny thing is, this is the second book that I wrote. I
Oh,
just didn't publish the first one. That one's probably going to come out in a few months now that this one's come out. The first book, completely different genre. It's more of just a sci-fi. And then I am working on a third book right now that's really more horror, and then it flips on its head and becomes like fantasy horror. So I'm trying to once again challenge myself by doing different types of projects and not just living in the one world, that dystopian world of the Mark. I want to do other things. I am going to come back to the Mark. I think I'm going to do that as the next book after I finish this one. However, I'm still letting those ideas kind of like
yeah.
sink in and figure out exactly what I want to do. I like to think about them for a while and cross out ideas that I don't feel like will work with my end game. Um, but it's always good having those thoughts and that brainstorming, even if it's just internal, because you get really good ideas out of it in the long run.
Yeah, no, 100%. That's for me. So that's what I do is for a while I was driving or traveling a lot. So I always have these ideas. And that's where, like, over the past couple of weeks, I've had a few books released because they were on my computer. And then 2 months ago, I had an unexpected heart situation where they had to put a stent in. And I'm like, I have all these books. My kid's gonna wipe out my computer if I die. And which would be fine. The world would still go on and things like like that. But I know that every time that I've had a book published, people read it and they're like, "Wow, I didn't know you could do that. I didn't know." And so there are people who just need it out there in the universe. I don't know where that comes into. I donate a lot of the books to senior citizen facilities and things like that, where people just want to spend time reading, and these are just nice generational stories generally. But that's really what we do is have all these stories. It's like anything else. Once you have that first time, you get through that, it becomes easier to then keep going because you already know that winning formula.
Yeah, the hard part, honestly, isn't even writing the book, right? I enjoy writing the book. It's all the stuff on the back end,
Yeah.
trying to, find an editor, go through all of those changes, work towards getting it published, marketing it. And me being a baby at this, I had no idea what I was doing. So I
It
had,
is
I had
tough.
some hiccups along the way and then did some more research, but I feel like I'm on the right track now, but there's always more I can learn and always more that I can do. So I'm still trying to work through that.
Yeah, no, that's the hard part, but knowing that you don't know it all. I mean, that's why when people read it, I still get defensive, and I go, "Oh, I'm not Hemingway." I go, depending on where you're looking at it, will the time that you spent reading the book be worthwhile? Yes, I think whatever it is, and I've had people go, "Man, I finished it in a weekend." I go, "Great." Was that a well spent weekend, or was it? And if it's a well spent weekend, then I'm always happy about that. So
Yeah, when people tell me they've read it, my first question is not, did you like the grammar? Or were
yeah,
there was there
yeah.
anything out of place? It was, did you enjoy the story? Did
Well,
it capture you? Do you want to read more about it? That's what I care about.
yeah. Well, the first book that I published was just some personal stories and poems that I did, and people said they read it and things like that. And one friend came to me, well, on page this, I go, look, it was through an editor. I go, I have nothing. I go, and I'm okay. I'm don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. I go, did you read the story? And it was also a lesson. It was one of the stories they didn't understand. They understood the story was a nice story, but they were like the way I worded it, and it was something along the lines of like tongue in cheek type of conversations. Like I learned the lesson that I needed to learn, not the way that I wanted to learn it. And they didn't understand that. And I was like, but that's like everything. And then once I explained it to him, he was like, oh, now it becomes different. So, I'm like, okay, good. But the people there's always going to be somebody who's going to criticize you. There's an error here. And I've looked at even books, from the big five, right? The editing houses, the publishing houses, and you see errors, and they have professional. Did that ruin the book, right? Did the extra sugar ruin the cake? No.
Depends on who's reading it. My wife got stuck on one of the pages because she thought that I was missing a sentence.
Oh.
And it was just the way that I wrote it. I wanted it to be like, oh, wait a minute, what happened? Like, why did it happen that way? And she got so stuck on it, thinking I missed a sentence, that she had to come home and show it to me and have me explain it to her. And now that she pointed it out, I can absolutely see why she got stuck there. And it's like, well, I could have added that in, but I was trying to be like mysterious and make you wonder what was going on. But part of that is, that part of that's going to be my writing journey and having to adjust some things
Sure.
as I figure it out. So, I'm no Stephen King. I haven't written 50 books, but it's still good, whether or not, it's,
Yeah.
you know, 100, 1%. It's still a great book.
Yeah, so I guess that's part of it. So how do you balance, being in a corporate life, right? Insurance and all, that's a very finite position. It's a very finite thinking. How do you move out of that rigid corporate safety net or way of thinking to hit your dystopian visions?
So I've always been very imaginative and creative, and being in that corporate world, I have to do something to keep my sanity, right?
100%.
So that's reading, that's writing, that's gaming. The hard part being in the corporate world is finding time to write, because a lot of times by the time I get done with my day, I'm tired. Like
Yeah.
I'm mentally and emotionally exhausted with all of the stuff that I've had to deal with. And now I have to turn to my other computer and write something. So, depending on what I have going on in my life, I might not write anything for a month. I might write something every day. It just depends on my mindset, what else I have going on, if I have to go outside and work in the yard or do something like that. So I don't feel like my writing is any good if I sit down and force myself to
Right.
write something just to write something. I want to write when I feel like I have something to say or something to add to the work that I'm doing.
Yeah, no, and that was one of the other things is how do you put yourself in that mindset? Like for me, I walk in my backyard. I take my shoes and sh socks off, and I walk in the grass. It's always been one of those grounding efforts for me to do. Do you have a ritual like that?
No, to get myself in the mindset for what I'm writing, I will usually like reread like the chapter that I'm in or the previous chapter. But as for actually like getting into the world, I'm always living in some type of fantasy world, so it doesn't take much effort to get there.
Yeah, no, 100%. But that's part of the fun of it is getting to share those stories and one person wants to explain, how do you come up with all these ideas? I go, it's the voices in my head and
Hmm.
not a psychological, not like I'm hearing voices. I actually feel, and that's why I call it sometimes a doula situation, is I'm birthing these people to life. It's stories in my life. I mean, even there's a book I'm writing right now, among the books I'm writing right now, is a diary. It's through personal stories that I wrote. It's a girl who's writing a diary, and it was a story that I was on the other side of living that diary. But you get to spend time with that character. Like for me, that's a healing journey for her because she died unexpectedly. But sitting with her again, and because she had given me permission to read her real diary, I'm not using anything that's in there. I mean, it might be things that we have done, but not the personal stuff. But sitting with her. I mean, it was one day I sat with her for a couple hours, and I was like, man, this was like the night. It was like she was here and there's a healing part of that. Do you feel that when you're writing your book, with your heroine, that you're, or any of the characters, that you're there with them, or they're your people?
Oh yeah, 100%. Like Alexandra is one of my good friends. I love her to death, right? So, um, and then when I go back through and I reread it, I am sometimes even still surprised at what she says or what she does because it's so off the wall, but I still find humor in it, right? I have a very dark sense of humor, so when she's telling someone to do something that you know isn't healthy for them to keep it PC. I just crack up. I think it's hilarious the way that she talks and the way that she handles herself in situations, and I do feel that connection to her. And as different people have read the book, I'll start bringing up other characters. Well, what did you think of them? And did you like their personality? I'm almost like worried that whoever's reading isn't going to like my friends, and I really want them to like my friends. So I do feel that connection to the characters.
Yeah, no, it's great because that I think that's what we do as authors, is bring those things part of our life. It's I guess that psychology that we where there are people, right? You might be able to make fun of me, and I could be making fun of you if we were close friends, and uh, I hope we will be. But but it's one of those things: is don't let anybody else outside of our circle make fun of you, or vice versa, and you act differently. So how do you work with with that part of the psychology to write with the power of your characters, but also not worried about what the outside world says?
Well, I write the stories in the books so that I like them. That's all I care about. I want to like
I,
it. I want to enjoy it. I want to be surprised by what's going on and taken aback by the ending or by how certain situations play out. And then when I'm done, I'm happy. And I'm assuming that if I like it, someone else out there or several
exactly.
someone else's out there are going to like it. And so far, I've been successful with that with the two books that I've finished. I've had a lot of positive feedback. I mean, there's been negative feedback too, where, like my wife doesn't like Alexandra. She's just kind of mean. She doesn't treat people well. That was the point. Like that was 100% the point. So I just, I developed her to be more than just that sassy person. Like you have to look at her actions and the other things that she does too.
Yep, no, 100%. Yeah, you have to have a piece of you in that book, and what you want to do. So all the things that you're doing with that, and again, I think writing becomes an outlet for you. I know you said you do gaming and things like that. Um, does all that lead to the same? I mean, it really is all about us. I think that was something also you said. It's you like the book, and if you like the book, people like you will like the book also, or find out about it. So you have a whole team of to get your book out there. So how is that working, integrating the team for that one effort on getting the books out there, and hearing the feedback and moving forward?
Um, I mean, it wasn't hard to get it rolling. Money will get anything rolling,
True.
but it hearing the feedback was tough, and just trying to having to take a step back and realize they're not doing it to be critical, right? They're not doing it to put me down. They're trying to help me. So I had to put those glasses on and look at it from that perspective, to realize that they're just trying to help me put a better product out there, to create a better world, to have better characters. Um, and once I got that through my disappointment, I was really able to take those criticisms and help make the book better. I mentioned earlier, like I had to add a whole first section in of the book, and that came from the beta testing. And they said, we love the idea of this genetic disaster causing an apocalypse, which leads to this dystopian world, but we don't understand it soon enough in the book. Why did it happen? How did it happen?
Mm.
What actually happens on a cellular level, on a molecular level? So I went in and I added a whole prologue to it, right? And I've had so many people after they've read that go, that was one of my favorite parts of the book because it sucked me right in and I wanted to know what was going on.
Mm.
So, having that team behind me just overall helped me create a better product.
Yeah. Well, that's also you use that strategic thinking and feedback, right? So it's leading that, but there's also the resilience, right? So after hearing all that feedback, you could have given up, but leading through that and turning pressure into growth. How do you do all that? How does that fit into your process?
Well, I mean, I had to develop that over, a couple decades of just being in the workforce.
Mm.
You can't take the criticisms that people are giving you personally unless they're just being downright rude about it. You have to take what they're saying because they hopefully have more experience than you do, and they're just trying to guide you down that path. So as I've grown in my jobs and I've had those criticisms and I've had those suggestions and those learning opportunities, it made it easier for me to then compute that into accepting those about the book too, and just being able to translate that into making those changes to just help it grow and be something better than what it was originally.
Sure. Yeah, no, I think that self-awareness, and knowing how to kind of move through those things, but you learn that through life.
Well, and that can be tough too because I spent probably 2 years writing this, right? And when you get done with that, you're like, it's perfect. It's
Yep.
perfect.
Yep.
It's like when you give birth to an ugly baby. It's perfect,
Yep.
you know? But it's definitely not. It's not. And you have to take the time and take the effort and the I apologize, I can't think of the word, but you have to take that step off the ledge and hope that there's somebody there to help support you. And
Well,
that's what
that
your editing team does and your marketing team does and everything like that. And it takes your ugly baby and it makes it a cute child.
Yep, and that's the thing is really learning from it and putting faith in other people. That's building that right team, and you know by trusting. They're not going to like everything that you do, and you might not like everything that they're going to suggest, and you figure out what is valid and what's
Hmm.
not. That's part of the resilience. Is like, okay, they said it was horrible. One chapter was horrible. Okay, great. Either take it out or figure out a way to rewrite that or guidance in that way.
I mean, out of every 10 suggestions they gave me, I probably implemented like six of them, you know? So while they're giving you this feedback, you should digest it all and then decide how does this affect my story and is it affecting it in a way that I feel is positive? Because ultimately, it's your story, right? It's
Right.
not theirs. So you need to do what's right for you and what's right for what you've created.
Yeah. No, that I agree completely. As we get closer to the end of the episode, I always have somebody walk into the magic garden and to kind of like plant a seed. You've given us some advice on writing and your process. Do you have another piece of advice that you might want that for aspiring writers or just anybody in general that you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, I've been waiting to walk into the magic garden. I'm excited for this. So I would say, don't be scared by what you're going to have to deal with at the end. I know I've maybe even chalked it up and made it a little scarier. Just work on getting the book done. Even if you don't publish it, it makes you feel so good when you've
Yes.
created something. And then if you sit on it for 6 years like I did, it doesn't matter.
20
Eventually,
years.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Eventually, you may feel like, okay, now is the right time to pull this back out, dust it off, go through it again, see how your voice that's actually one of the things that I really like. My voice has changed a ton since the first book I wrote. I still find it amusing. And when you pull those back out, you rediscover a piece of yourself from the past. So don't don't necessarily write because you want to make money, write because you want to enjoy it. And if you make money after the fact, it's just an added bonus.
100%. You know, because most authors, right? I think statistically they say most books, especially now with the, self-publishing, which I've done, you know, if you sell 100 books, you're successful. But it really is one of those things is do it for yourself. And I love that piece of advice.
Well, good. Yeah, my goal is not to be rich. My goal is just make my money back, and I will be happy.
Yep. And just pass the time, right? The time's going to pass
Hmm.
anyway. Do something that you really enjoy, and I'm glad that you're doing that. How can they find the book and you?
Well, the book, like every book, is available on Amazon. It's authored by T.A. Thompson. It's called The Mark. My website is tathompsonwriter.com. And then I'm also on Facebook. It's t.a.thompson. Those are the simplest ways to find me.
Okay, well, I hopefully everybody will find you. I'm going to reconnect with you on after and through social media. We can support each other and make sure that the things that we do are out there. And hopefully, we never get into a world like the Mark. Well, we get into the world through the reading, not the actual world.
Exactly. That's the only way I want to be there.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been great.
And for everybody else, I hope it's been great. Get the book, The Mark. It's definitely a page turner. And, make sure you put peace and love in your life, maybe by reading a book of worst case scenarios, but how it turns out. And you find yourself as a heroine as well. Uh, and then when you bring it back, again, bringing the awesome thoughts in books like this and others, support authors, and make sure you hit your sweet spot. Thanks so much. Have a great day.